back to the beginning now for a minute. Let's go back to 1966, when this whole thing got started. The suggestion is that your father hit on a good gimmick. You're always accusing the church of being hypocritical and using gimmicks, but it seems to me that your father hit on a very good gimmick. And then there was a lot of showmanship involved. I mean, nudes on altars and satanic ceremonies. How sincere was the beginning of the church? How sincere?
It was quite sincere. There had to be public attention to pave the way for Satanism to be a recognized and above-board religion, as it had never been before. So there had to be public attention. You don't have a movement without moving.
And the archetype of the devil has always been as a showman.
And he always admitted that.
All artists, anyone who has a creative way of attracting attention has always been accused of having diabolical powers.
Now, but what I find interesting is, although many people like yourself might think that he was only doing it as for gimmick's sake and because he was a good showman, you also complain that he won't come and be on your show.
Yeah.
So now, which is it? Would you rather have him be a good showman and come on your show?
Well, why doesn't he come out of the closet?
He's not in a closet. He's living his life happily.
But he is not, I mean, he is fronting an organization.
Listen, he came out of the closet in 1966 so that everybody else could come out of the closet.
But excuse me, but he is not making his views, his doctrines, his beliefs.
His views and doctrines are available in the
He's not making
Bible.
them open to the objective inquiry of the press, of journalists, of anyone. No, he's not. I mean, you are speaking for him, but he does not put himself on the line to defend what he believes.
He's past that point.
He no longer has the need to speak to the media in that fashion, and certainly the Christian media is a dying force.
And he's living his life.
Wait. The Christian media is a dying force?
The Christian media is now going through its last very extravagant death throes. Jim and Tammy Baker,
where do you get these statistics from?
All of the evangelists are slowly falling out of favor. And as we move into the satanic century, we're going to see Christianity's last gasp.
Well, now hang on. Excuse me just a minute, Nicholas. You make some broad sweeping statements that do not have statistical validation. Now, while it is true that certain televangelists have had a marked drop in their audiences, overall, the growth of religious media in America is exploding. Can you quote me any statistics in regards to religious radio stations and religious television stations?
Much more.
Do you know how fast they are growing in this country?
There's much more religious media than ever. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that's a sign of the death throes of Christianity. You've given up your ideals, and now you're joining the devil's ranks, which is to entertain people. You are now part of the media, which is something that the fictional character you base your religion on, Jesus Christ, would certainly not have condoned.
Well, now
you are now using...
Nicholas, you throw so many, I don't want to interrupt you, I want to be polite, but you throw so many little zingers out that are just factually inaccurate. I do have to call you. You just casually say this fictional character, you completely disregard the historicity of Christ. But let's come back to that.
As most historians would.
Well, that's not entirely accurate, sir. Let's get back. Let's get back to the.
Well, it is quite accurate. If
all right, let's get back to where the whole thing started. Okay. Let's get some facts straight here, and I'm asking you, Zena, because the press has kicked these things around. Jane Mansfield. Was Jane Mansfield a follower and or a lover of your father?
Yes, she was a member of the Church of Satan. I will not discuss my father's private life because I don't think it's anybody's business. But she was definitely a devout follower of the satanic philosophy.
At a time, a follower of the church?
At a time, yes.
Are there any prominent stars today who are followers openly of the Church of Satan, such as these people were back in the 60s?
There are, and some of them we already know of. Some
Who?
of them, well, if you want entertainers, King Diamond is a member of the Church of Satan. He openly admits that. None of these other heavy metal people are.
Right.
And then there are other actors as well.
For whom? For example, whom?
Well, because of the recent hysteria we've seen, I'm not going to put their
There are people in every field
jeopardy.
of endeavor, in architecture, science.
Excuse me, but why?
Fact.
You see, you blame it on hysteria, but in fact, if they're a follower of Satan, should they not be willing to step forward and say so? I mean...
well, that's what we're embarking on now.
Well, what the 90s are going to see is a massive rise of Satanism. People are going to come out of the shadows and reveal themselves as thoroughgoing Satanists. Because what we're seeing now is the death struggle between the Judeo-Christian idea and archetype and the more ancient satanic archetype.
Nicholas, for $100, anybody can join the Church of Satan. That's what the membership form says. And that's a lifetime membership.
They can join the Church of Satan on that level. However, to become an active member of the Church of Satan requires that you are already doing something to advocate Satanism. Simply by joining, you do not become a Satanist.
So that's just a quick, easy $100 to pocket.
No, it's
well, it is because I mean, just what do you get for your $100? A little membership card that says, "Hi, I'm a Satanist."
No, Satanism is not like Christianity, a way of gathering sheep together in one place. We feel that the best way to change the world into a satanic arena is by having strong individuals in different areas do their own individual work. So by joining the Church of Satan, you enter into the possibility of going into the higher echelons of the Church of Satan.
But if you join a Christian church, there is some obligatory relationship that you have, some duties and responsibilities to perform.
The Christian
do you
church,
not have any duties? I mean, you pay your $100, you get your card, and that's it? You don't require anything?
If that's all you choose to do. Most Satanists, as most Christians, are not fully committed. Most Christians are not fervent Christians.
And you guys got that problem, too.
Everyone has. When you are dealing with human beings, you have the problem of insincerity. How many Christians are truly Christian? I maybe met 5 in my entire life.
Well, if they're not truly Christian, then they're not Christians.
So that just becomes a semantic problem.
Yeah, can you be a Satanist and not truly be a Satanist?
It's a problem of semantics. As I said, you can say you're a Martian. Well, what does that mean? Satanism is a very broad-based word. To be a member of the Church of Satan is another thing. If I say Bob Larson represents Christianity, therefore does Bob Larson represent Jim Jones and Jim Baker and Jimmy Swaggart and Charles Manson, other people who have called themselves Christians? So you understand the problem. It's a question of semantics and definition.
Okay, let's talk about the church for a minute, because there's so much that I would know and take for granted, and certainly you would know much more and take for granted, that the average person has no understanding of. It is a church. It takes that moniker. It presumes that position. And when we think of a church, we think of weddings, we think of funerals, we think of ceremonies of worship, of its views on everything from medical treatment to
those are all activities that go under the umbrella of the
let's
Church of
find
Satan.
out what goes on in the Church of Satan.
Well, one of the main misconceptions is that the Church of Satan is a physical building where black-robed people come to congregate. The Church of Satan is an idea more than a building. It is a large network of people internationally who are committed to the ideas of Satanism. We don't all get together and have bingo games and raffles like Christian churches do to keep everyone feeling like they're part of one big happy family.
I have to jump in on you now. I don't approve of bingo games and raffles.
No, I didn't say that you did, but you
and
understand.
I don't think that's truly representational of the legitimate activities of Christianity.
Okay, then, if you can say that, most of what you are defining as Satanism is not part of what we would define as legitimate Satanism, just as I will give you the benefit of the doubt and assume you are a legitimate Christian, and Jim Jones was not a legitimate Christian.
You're a legitimate Satanist.
The Church of Satan represents legitimate Satanism.
And some kid who gets a Slayer album and cuts the head off of a cat is not a legitimate Satanist.
I wouldn't want to be anywhere near him any more than you would.
All right. Now, let's talk specifically. Marriage. You perform marriages?
Of course.
What is the satanic marriage ceremony like? What do they do? They obviously don't wear white.
They could wear white.
They can wear whatever they want.
There is no dogma or constricting.
And there's no obligation.
Well, what do you do? I mean, like witches have a hand fasting ceremony. Do you have something like that?
Well, we encourage people to decide what they want. If they want a particular type of ceremony, then we'll help them write it. But there is no steadfast, hard and solid.
The proper use of black magic is to find out what will work for you personally and devise a ritual that will fulfill your archetypal desires in a way appropriate to you. A ritual that would work for Bob Larson to get what he wants out of the world isn't going to work for the next person.
Excuse me, you said black magic. You just let that roll off your tongue like, hey,
easily.
A black magic ceremony for Satan.
Black magic, and again it's a question of semantics, I would define as the use of will and ritual combined to create change in the world without any restraint on what that change might be. No hypocritical pretending that we are appealing to a higher force.
Well, have you been to a satanic marriage? I mean, have they ceremony?
Sure.
What was it like?
I've conducted them.
You married people?
Sure.
In the name of Satan?
If you want to use that terminology, yeah.
What did they do?
It would be satanic.
Well,
it varies.
We've all seen Christian wedding ceremonies.
Right.
So we know the philosophical frame of reference in which that occurs, but we don't know philosophically what's happening.
Well, a satanic marriage is usually they're considerably smaller, more intimate, and because you have a gathering of people who are completely for you, and each one is different from the other. We don't have a set rule as to what the marriage will consist of.
Unlike the Christian church that has an assembly line idea, a certain dogma is read, two people agree to it, you are now part of the Christian community in marriage. We feel that each individual should form a union with whoever they wish to.
But of course, Nicholas, that's because in Christianity there is a prior philosophical commitment as to what marriage represents. And so what I'm saying
marriage
is...
to us, to Satanism in brief, marriage represents what you want it to represent. We believe each individual is entitled to decide what their life should consist of. There is no bond to any supernatural entity.
And even to decide if you even want to be married at all.
Marriage is not mandatory, nor is... Nothing is mandatory.
Would you marry two lesbians?
I personally do not believe that homosexuality is a natural practice any more than you do. And I don't...
Would you marry them if they thought it was and wanted to be? I mean, Anton LaVey, the Satanic Bible certainly condones it.
They would certainly be able to marry themselves and consider themselves married.
Well, it may sound like an absurd question, but suppose Joe wants to marry his golden retriever. If we're all animals, I mean, can Joe conceivably marry his dog?
Speaking for the Werewolf Order, which is my organization in particular, we do not feel that homosexuality is a healthy or natural or safe or hygienic practice.
But you're contradicting Anton in the Satanic Bible.
No. What I would agree with him in this sense, that I do not prescribe any moral onus against it. What I'm saying is do whatever you want to do, but accept the consequences that come with it. And
well, you're not answering the question about the golden retriever, and I'm not...
No, I don't. I believe bestiality is as repugnant to me as it is to you, but not for moral reasons, but because of natural reasons.
Well, but earlier you said we're all animals. I mean, an animal's an animal.
Well,
so what's the difference?
Animals don't breed.
A wouldn't mate with a Siamese cat.
Yeah, only humans.
So neither would a human
only humans are so neurotic that they break the natural law.
Without getting too intellectual here, you do have some
yes, I have a strong
differentiation.
See, that's something
that in effect you're not willing to call morals, but in effect places you as a human animal on a higher rung of evolution's ladder, giving you certain priorities over what you do to the rest.
No, absolutely not. In fact, I believe that animals should be protected by humans, as it is our duty as the inheritors of the earth to protect the ecology, to protect wildlife, and satanic ecology is forefront on our agenda. We need to protect the earth that we live on and our natural environment.
With the occult Aryan ideas of Hitler. So what I'm saying is...
Well, that's what you're deciding because you're a Christian in 1989. The Christian church rulership in the 1600s would think you were a heretic for saying such things. So all I'm telling you is morality is a relative issue, and nobody can decide what is good and evil.
Is murder relative?
Murder is absolutely relative. When we sent, when I say we, I mean the American government sent our troops to Vietnam to kill people. Was it evil? Were those good murderers? Are there good murderers if they're wearing a soldier's uniform and bad murderers if they're not?
Would you say that to the mother of Sharon Tate?
Yes, I would say that to the mother of Sharon Tate. In fact,
do you want to let Charlie Manson out of prison?
That's a whole other issue.
Do you? Do you think he deserves to be let out of prison?
Charles Manson, for one thing, I don't believe is guilty of the crimes he's been accused of. But that's a whole other issue.
You're kidding.
Well, how much do you really know
about How much
about
do you know about Charles Manson? How much do you know about Hitler?
Well,
how much do you know about
now,
anything?
wait a minute. Zena, Charlie has pretty well made his philosophy known. I mean, he's spoken clearly and openly. And there's no denial on his part of his role in the Tate LaBianca murders, that he sent those people in. Are you saying that Charlie Manson is a rational mind? Are you saying this man is not a murderous psychotic? Is that what you're saying?
By your point of view, of course not.
Zena, I don't find it terribly surprising that there should be some analogies between your father and people like Rasputin. It seems pretty reasonable to me in terms of the ideology that he set forth. It really is a get yours first, don't look out for the other guy, Machiavellian kind of philosophy.
Well, that's right. But also you were referring to other people in history that I was saying you have to consider both sides of every story.
There's another side to Hitler?
Do you think there's only one side to anything?
Guy killed 6 million people.
And that's all you know? And that's all you have to know?
No, I know much more about Hitler than that. But in terms of determining his moral place in history, I don't have any problem.
Now, we're in the same position.
Who determines the moral place? Who determines it? Who has the right to determine what is good and evil?
Well, of course, I would respond from the standpoint of the Christian ethic, but even a humanist sitting in this chair.
I don't like humanists any more than Christians.
You don't like humanists either?
Humanists, you have to understand this once and for all. Christians must know Satanism is not humanism. Humanism is based on Christian ethics and ideas. It just doesn't have Christ, but it has the same appalling ideas about equality, love for everybody, indiscriminate love for all living things, and we oppose those ideas.
Altruism, humanitarianism,
Humanism and Christianity are in bed together. They're the same thing.
Well, the humanists might not appreciate that, but I hear where you're coming from.
Of course they wouldn't.
A white witch
and as far as I'm concerned, there's Satanism and then there's other people.
Yeah, your father in the satanic rituals really puts out some zingers at the witches who want to be white witches. He says there really is no such thing. A witch is a witch is a witch.
That's right. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree. Now there's where I do agree with your father. Yes.
I think you would find that you do agree on a lot of principles with the satanic philosophy, if you clearly understood and looked at it. We are saying that the act
I don't know if I'd carry that far.
In the sense that the act of manipulating and using the will and using ritual to create change is, by any definition, satanic. And anyone who does that is at least an ipso facto Satanist. So these witches that say they're good witches, white witches, nice witches, are as hypocritical as a Christian to me.
Your father also says in the Satanic Witch, quote, of psychics who say, God gave me the gift. These people are playing the devil's game, but refusing to use the devil's name. Psychics who say, God gave me the gift. These people are playing the devil's game, but refusing to use the devil's name.
Well, that's right. Wouldn't you consider any form of divination or faith healing or
Divination is biblically forbidden. I would consider it to be satanic.
So we would say that anything that would fall under that category would be considered satanic. And it's not just us. I mean, this has been throughout history. And predating Christianity, there have always been those who have veered from the mainstream, whatever that mainstream was, who have gone out in the wilderness and built shacks to live in, to be away from the mainstream and live their own lives the way they feel they ought to.
Well, the one thing I can say, you Satanists are certainly more honest than most witches when it comes to acknowledging the authenticity, the reality of what you're doing.
We're not, as I was saying, you might not like what we have to say, but we are honest. I mean, we don't claim to be anything that we aren't.
Well, speaking
let me explain what happened. The Other Side of Madness, a film that was made in 1970, an exploitation film, was shown. And of course, as everyone has reported in the national media, the audience cheered during the murder sequence.
Well, this is a bloody murder sequence. I mean, this was when Sharon Tate's body is slit open and her child, her unborn child, is removed. And
no, that didn't happen, but that's a fine point. But yes, it was a bloody murder.
The audience cheered.
Mm-hmm.
Nicholas, you're sitting there so calm.
What do you want me to do? Cry? What do you want me to do? Have remorse and break down in tears?
This is what I find interesting.
What is the proper reaction
you won't
from a
say
Christian
that Hitler is evil. You sit there calmly. You want us...
What do you want? What's the right thing to do from the Christian point of view? Should I moan and whine about it?
Isn't this what you expect
We're looking
of
at
us?
human nature. If you can't accept it, that's your problem. I can.
Murder is always part of human nature.
Is it wrong? Is it wrong? Is it wrong to murder?
Wrong?
Are you going to change it?
Is it wrong to murder?
Depends on the circumstances.
No, you answer the question. Is it wrong to murder?
What is wrong? Murder is part of life.
We're telling you, we don't believe in good, evil, right, wrong dichotomy. If I come at you and you kill me in self-defense, is it wrong? Should you sacrifice yourself?
No, wait a minute.
Murder can't
That's
be
not murder.
Murder's no more wrong. Well, there, you're deciding.
Murder is no more wrong than what?
You're deciding what murder is.
What is it then? Define everything if you
All
want
I'm
to debate
saying
it
is
clearly.
there always has been
we got
murder.
6,000 years of human history to define what murder is.
That's right. So how are we
Killing
going to
is
define
a part
it
of
here?
animal behavior. Humans do it
Well, now,
more than others.
I don't really believe that I would need to worry about walking down a dark alley and being followed by either of you with a gun in your pocket. But what you have just said, let me finish. What you have just said, articulated to the masses, particularly in a dysfunctional society where people are filled with all types of anger and rage because of past abuses, what you're really doing, I think, is potentially lighting a fuse. I'm not worried that you're going to pull a gun out of your pocket and shoot me in front of these cameras, but I don't know that somebody else might not do that because of what you said. You're not willing to condemn murder.
Let me answer your questions in 3 points. The masses. We have no regard for the masses. Satanism is a religion for the elite. It is a religion for leaders. It's a religion for competent people. It's not a religion for anyone who wants to be a Satanist. We don't say welcome to the club.
The homeless, the handicapped, those with multiple sclerosis
I don't want
apply.
the homeless, the handicapped.
The people in Mother Teresa's home for the dying and the destitute, they need not apply.
I don't want them. You've taken that on your shoulders. That's your job. You're doing a great job with the homeless. You help everyone. We're helping those who help themselves, as it says in your Bible. And you can take the weak.
No, it doesn't say that in the Bible.
You can take the decrepit. You can take people who can't help themselves. We don't want them. It's simple. It's very simple.
The homeless you don't want to shelter?
No, I don't want to shelter people who can't take care of themselves. Why can't they?
The hungry, the starving, you don't want to
feed?
Dina, go ahead, Dina. What were you saying?
That produces more of the same. There has to be some change. If you look at the animal kingdom, how is the animal kingdom able to survive? There is no such thing as homeless.
Back to social Darwinism again. In the animal kingdom, you preserve what is strong.
Hang on.
You give more food to the stronger animal.
Until humans
you don't feed the weaker one.
I'm trying to...
There's no welfare in the animal
Nicholas, I'm
world.
trying to remain as academically detached as I possibly can.
It's not an academically detached question.
Is so absolutely disgustingly outrageous. Now,
And
just
to
wait,
me-
just wait a minute. Let me.
To you,
To me, it's disgustingly outrageous that you would help these weak people who are draining our resources, who are causing so many problems. We could be doing positive things in the world.
Zena, I want to ask
These
you,
weaklings are taking away all of our energy and resources. And you've decided to help them. That's disgusting to me.
You've never been to a refugee camp.
Why would I possibly want to go to a refugee camp?
Well, Zena, I've been
You have
there.
this
I wanna ask
masochistic
Zena.
love for
She's a woman.
weakness.
And what do you think that'll gain you?
Because
You wanna ask me?
women have more
Because women
sensitive
are
natures.
soft.
I just want to make sure it isn't this firm resolve of this man who's over.
If you're going to get a soft reaction from me because I'm a woman, then you
I'm
won't.
not. If you were in an Ethiopian famine camp,
What would
You
I
would-
be doing there?
you
Isn't
would
that
not-
the problem of the Ethiopian government, to take care of their own people? Why should we be taking
no, I tell you
care
what it's
of
the
them?
problem of. It's the problem of a communist totalitarian ideology in the Mengistu government that put those people in the place.
I
A
agree with you
philosophy,
there.
Well,
sir,
that's
a philosophy
fine, so that's
of dialectical materialism, a communist me-first philosophy
oh,
that is
nonsense.
not
Let me-
far from what you've said.
See,
now,
that's-
just
okay,
wait,
let's put it back on an academic level.
No, let's get back to the refugee camp.
Okay, now,
You don't. I want to ask Zena. Zena, you don't want to feed starving people. You want them to die. That's what you're telling
No,
me.
I like your salesman technique of putting words in people's
Well,
mouths.
then you speak for yourself.
Did I ever say I want them to die? I'm saying, why do they exist in the first
Would
place?
you feed them?
Why would they be allowed
Would
to
you raise
exist?
money? Would you do what you could to collect the resources to feed them?
Would a wolf raise money to collect resources
for the
to
whelps
feed
of the living.
a monkey in the tree?
Just yes or no, would you?
I'm using analogies. No, of course I wouldn't. If I did that, wouldn't they become more and more dependent on me and less dependent on themselves?
No, not
Why is
necessarily.
that?
Well, that hasn't been proven yet.
No,
so.
not necessarily.
Well, if you-
We're talking about
You
people.
just-
No. We're not talking about either lazy people or incompetent people.
Incompetent people.
No,
Yes, we are.
sir.
The Ethiopian government is incompetent.
But the people who suffer the starvation did
Why
not.
do we have a responsibility to help them unless we believe this nonsense in the Bible?
Because they're-
if we're realists, we
Because they're
don't have
human
any.
beings. Because they feel pain. Because they suffer. Because they hurt. Does not the hurt and pain
That
of
isn't
another
enough. That isn't enough reason
Does
for
not the hurt and suffering of another human being at all touch your-
if the human being is worthy
So
of
what
my
you're
attention. I love people who are worthy of my love. That's very few.
And what you're saying
People
is
who are strong, I admire them. I'll help them. I won't help people who are weak.
And
Okay.
what you're saying is we have to take the responsibility of other people's actions upon ourselves when we've done nothing, absolutely nothing, to have that result. We didn't do anything to
Does that
promote.
matter? They hurt. I mean, they're in pain. Does it matter? Does it matter? They hurt. I mean, you hurt. You call yourself an animal, but you hurt. You cut your finger. You bleed. This is, Zena, this is your father's book, the Satanic Bible. I mean, this is it. This is the diatribe of the devil that has brought together thousands of people in your belief system.
Mm-hmm.
The true prince of evil.
Isn't that poetic?
Do you believe that, Zena?
And aren't you taking it a bit out of context?
I'm reading it. I mean, I'm reading
Oh,
it.
Well,
okay.
isn't
Hand me
Jesus-
that Holy Bible and I'll read you something too.
Zena, you know what I'm reading. I mean, you know the book. It's page
By our
30 right here.
standard, Jesus is the
I-
true prince of evil.
Will you
Let
let
me-
me read something from my own book?
Well, let me read it first,
Oh, and
okay?
why is that?
You don't want to... I'm reading...
Why can't I choose things to read as you would choose things from your
Well,
book carefully
because
to
I'm
read?
the person conducting the interview right now.
Maybe we should interview you.
I
Survival of the fittest. You
I
are a
gaze
social
into the
Darwinist.
glassy eye of
Why
your
aren't we-
fearsome Jehovah.
Right?
I pluck him by the beard, I uplift a broad axe, and split open his worm-eaten skull.
Right.
Did you know who wrote that?
You tell me.
Do you know who Ragnar
No, I don't
Redbeard
know.
is?
Who?
Ragnar Redbeard?
No, yes, Redbeard, yes. He wrote this. Well, your father's re-quoted it here.
Okay.
Whatever the case. Now, this is violent. This is abusive. It is
to Jehovah.
It's insulting, but beyond the insulting part of it, do you not find any reprehensibility in using this kind of language? Mind you, I don't believe that Buddha is God. I don't believe that Muhammad was a prophet. But I would never write something like this about Muhammad or Buddha.
That's because you feel like you have to please everyone.
No, because I would have some feelings of sensibility. I mean, you don't feel that there's any inciting of any violent rage in people in this type of language?
Obviously there is.
Of course
Well, I'm
there
asking
is.
Zena, do you?
Of course there is.
All right, I want to go through the 9 satanic statements, and I'm going to ask each of you alternately, if you will, to elaborate on them, so that there is no
It should be
misunderstanding.
pretty self-explanatory, but
Unlike
Okay.
the Christian Bible, the Satanic Bible speaks for itself. It requires no scholars to have councils
There's
of
no
Trent to
hidden
decide
meaning.
what this word meant or
I
that
wouldn't
word.
say that the Bible does either, but let's get to the 9 satanic statements, okay? Satan represents indulgence instead of abstinence. Zena?
isn't that self-explanatory? What is indulgence? That you have to be good to yourself before you can adequately be good to others? Is that evil? Is that wrong?
Are there any limits on that indulgence?
There's another section in the Satanic Bible that differentiates indulgence from compulsion.
Okay.
Maybe you'd
And
like to read that
self-destruction.
part.
Would you not, let's suppose that a pedophile's indulgence were the molestation of children, would you place that under this particular heading here of the first satanic statement,
It's
if that's his
clearly
indulgence?
stated. It's clearly stated in there how we feel about children and animals, and you know it.
I'm
It says
asking you.
It
I'm
says in
asking
the
you.
Satanic Bible that we revere children and animals above all things.
So there are limitations on the indulgence.
Of course. There are limitations imposed by your own self-discipline and fortitude, not because you believe what you read from God. That's a very primitive and silly way to go about living. We live because we know what is right for us.
You know.
hmm And to us, as it says in this...
You've constructed your own individual reality.
And I
to
think it
determine
works a hell of a lot better than the Christian one.
Satan represents undefiled wisdom instead of hypocritical self-deceit.
Look at the world as it really is. Don't delude yourself into thinking it's a way that it is not by calling upon holy cant and scripture as your guide to life. Let's look at the real world, look at the human condition as it exists right here and now.
Satan represents kindness to those who deserve it instead of love wasted on ingrates. See it?
Well, I already explained that too, insofar as turning the other cheek. Kindness, if you're kind to me, then obviously I will be kind to you. We treat people as they treat us. If someone's going to be rude to us or treat us inappropriately, then they have to expect that in return. We won't waste our kindness on what we would consider ingrates, and that is being treated with disrespect or rudeness.
Satan represents vengeance instead of turning the other cheek. And let me flip over here to page 33 and also quote in companion to that, quote, hate your enemies with a whole heart. If a man smites you on one cheek, smash him on the other. He who turns the other cheek is a cowardly dog.
Doesn't that speak for itself?
Yeah?
What's your
Well,
point?
what would you do?
I'm just asking you. I'm asking you. These are your beliefs.
Right,
Hollywood
those-
Boulevard, and you are attacked by a gang of drug dealers for no apparent reason. What would you do? Would you bow
Pray
down
for
to them
or
and
would
say,
you
I'll pray
strike
for
them
you?
back?
Or would you try to do something to survive?
Well, you see, I don't. You're asking. Do you want me to
no,
ask
you
the
asked
question?
me
I'll be
hypothetical
happy to answer the
questions.
question. Number 2, Satan represents vital existence instead of spiritual pipe dreams. I think that does need some explanation. What do you mean?
I really don't see how it does need explanation.
What is vital existence?
You don't know what vital existence is?
I'm asking you.
Our life here and now, living for, as I've said, all of the earthly and carnal pleasures. What is a spiritual pipe dream? Looking to some external deity or source for your answers. If something horrible happens to you, you just pass it off and say it's God's will. I'd call that a spiritual pipe dream.
Okay. Satan represents kindness to those who deserve it instead of love wasted on ingrates. See it?
Well, I already explained that too, insofar as turning the other cheek. Kindness, if you're kind to me, then obviously I will be kind to you. We treat people as they treat us. If someone's going to be rude to us or treat us inappropriately, then they have to expect that in return. We won't waste our kindness on what we would consider ingrates, and that is...
Satan represents vengeance instead of turning the other cheek. And let me flip over here to page 33 and also quote, in companion to that, quote, hate your enemies with a whole heart. If a man smite you on one cheek, smash him on the other. He who turns the other cheek is a cowardly dog.
Doesn't that speak for itself?
Yeah.
What's your point?
What would you do?
I'm just asking you. I'm asking you. These are your beliefs.
Right.
Boulevard, and you are attacked by a gang of drug dealers for no apparent reason. What would you do? Would you bow down to them and say, "I'll pray for you"?
Back?
Or would you try to do something to survive?
Well, you see, I don't. You see, I most certainly, if my life were endangered by someone who murderously or violently were attacking me. Now, some Christians would differ on this. Some would say kneel and pray. I'm not one who would kneel and pray. I don't run 5 miles a morning for nothing. I'd run. I'd get out of there as fast as I could or fight for my life. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about vengeance and revenge.
If you wrong me, however you wrong me, I will give you that same wrong back.
But if someone is physically striking you with their fist or hitting you with a steel rod, there is no question in anyone's mind you're being wrong. Mm-hmm. But in the abstract, and this is what we get back to earlier, it seems that you reserve the right always to determine who is the wronged party by your natural brute instincts.
Yes,
and what I'm saying is that the Bible tells us that the heart is deceitful and wicked, and who can know it? And common sense tells us that we all have been mistaken at some point in our lives, assuming that we were the wronged one, when in fact we may have been the person hurting someone else.
The Bible teaches us to hate our own instincts. The Bible is a guidebook to how not to...
Number 6, Satan represents responsibility to the responsible instead of concern for psychic vampires. Zena?
A psychic vampire is someone who drains you of your vital energy, someone who is constantly looking to you for their support and for their energy. Responsibility to the responsible means if you demonstrate that you have a certain amount of responsibility, you will gain that much more responsibility. Your actions are rewarded by what you achieve or what you acquire, rather than being siphoned off to someone who hasn't deserved them.
You know, Zena, before there was any Nobel Prize for Mother Teresa, and really before most anyone knew who she was, I visited her home for the destitute and dying in Calcutta, and I saw the poor people laying there in the throes of death. I saw her comforting them, touching them, giving them what food and water they needed. Those, by your definition, were psychic vampires because they could give nothing back.
And you don't think Mother Teresa had some ulterior motive?
No.
That she wanted these people to...
I really don't.
You don't think she wanted them to see her point of view?
No. As a matter of fact,
because most missions or missionaries want to convert people. They want people to
save souls. Isn't that what Christianity is designed to do?
That's a presumption I think that you people have made, but...
Well, I think it goes deeper than that.
I think you've made that presumption, but I think I've visited more mission compounds. Let me finish.
Okay.
I think I've visited more mission compounds around this world than you have.
Underneath the whole Christian theology and the whole organized structure of Christian dogma is what I feel is a masochistic, almost love and wallowing in despair and death. Christians love nothing more than to see suffering so they can go and whine and moan over it and help people and feel how good they are that they're helping people. It's a very morbid religion. You worship a God who's nailed and bleeding to a cross. Everything in the Bible drips with morbidity and death.
And drink his blood.
And yet you accuse us of being morbid. If you want to be around dying and sick people all the time, then you have every right to, but we are not obliged to help these people.
And shouldn't that be a choice? Shouldn't that be I thought this was a free country, shouldn't that be a personal choice from one individual to the next? Certainly there are going to be people who derive pleasure from doing that. And who are you to say that there are going to be people who don't want to do that? Who are you to say that that's wrong?
But to comfort them in the hours of their death, to offer an act of human kindness.
Well,
that's why there's people like you. You don't want us there.
You want us to be like that as well?
You go hug them. I don't want to.
Well, if I were that dying person and you were standing over my body, yes, I would want you to be like that.
Those I love that suffer pain, I will comfort. Those who I like, those who I favor. I'm not everybody's friend. How much clearer do I have to make it? A strong animal does not spend all of their energy and time on earth helping every weak animal. You help those in your own pack, in your own tribe, those who are like you, and those who are not like you and who are not contributing to you, you do not have a responsibility to.
If you want it on simpler terms, you can say that we are of different species.
Okay.
Let me quote something. Jesus said, I come not with peace, but with a sword. Now, if I'm a Christian and I say, well, I have a sword, I'm going to go kill non-Christians. It's a matter of interpretation. I would say...
No, that is absolutely philosophically inconsistent with the larger worldview of the teachings of Christ.
Just as it is with Satanism.
Well, okay.
Why blame the acts of a few nincompoops on a book?
We'll read from this book if you'd like, but let's read this book, all right?
Because this one's more interesting.
Music. This is your album, Nicholas. It's called Radio Werewolf, The Fiery Summons. You're pretty good at marketing yourself.
That's the devil's place. Illusion and showmanship.
You mean the devil is alive and well in Madison Avenue?
Of course. Advertising
I think
is the
you and I
devil's
agree with that. You're a self-described satanic musician. You've heard his music, Zena. What does it sound like? You tell me.
It's more along the lines of classical music. It would be the equivalent to, it is satanic gospel, I guess you could say. It would be the equivalent of what you have.
Except the word gospel means good news. In this case, it's bad
news to us.
It's good news.
Bad news for you.
What does the music do to you when you listen to his music? How does it affect you in a certain way? Is there something about the mood, the ambiance of this? What does it do to you?
Well, the music and I'm beginning to work with Nicholas on his music. We make music for a purpose. It's not just background music, or it's not just, fluffy, light stuff.
This is not elevator satanic music.
It's ritualistic music. It is music that by even the act of listening to it, you are participating in a satanic ritual.
By listening to, so if I put this on and listen to it, I'm participating. But you're a listener. I'm asking you, how does it make you feel?
It's very stirring. It's very emotionally charged. You can't listen to this music and say you don't feel something, because you do. I'm sure you would probably feel either hate or fear or rage or something.
I don't know, maybe he's a great musician. I just say the guy's very talented.
Right, but I would say that someone who would listen to it would probably feel very similarly to how one might feel if they're listening to classical music that is bombastic and emotionally charged.
Here's a song called Incubus, which is about sexual cohabitation with demons, a human being cohabiting with a spirit being.
Right. That's what it is. That's correct.
True.
So,
and
how does that make you feel?
Well, this is another
this is a woman
mythology.
Cohabiting with a demon.
Right. There are succubuses, too, which
does that make you want to do it, or what?
Bring it down to the lowest
I'm asking
level.
you. He says it is ritual music that draws you into its intent.
Particular
I'm asking a point-blank question.
That
Don't
particular
pass it on.
song is
Does
designed...
it make you want to do that, or what does it do? He's named it Incubus. What does it do?
It's very stimulating, of course.
It's designed for sexual
It's designed
arousal,
to sexually
of course,
stimulate.
Of course.
Prepare one for a cohabitation with a demon?
Well, I don't believe in demons. I'm using a mythological word, incubus. It's an archetype. It is a real force, but you believe in demons. I don't. You're talking about demons. I'm not.
Is this commercial music? Is this is it going to sell, or is it just Satanists who listen to this, or who's going to run out the record store and buy it?
Satanists listen to it, and people who respond to a satanic philosophy, whether they call themselves Satanists or not, listen to it. But it is not intended for the millions. Certainly not.
You mentioned King Diamond earlier. King Diamond is a member of the Church of Satan, correct? King Diamond is a metal musician, kind of thrash metal, black metal. How do you feel about the Metallicas and Slayers of the world?
Well, musically, I think I hate rock music. I think rock music's one of the most dangerous influences on young people in a long time.
Well, why is it dangerous?
It promotes self-destruction, which we're adamantly opposed to.
It promotes the use of drugs. It promotes a very conformist attitude, even though rock musicians and...
Under the guise of nonconformity.
Does it bother you, Zena, that they're kind of using your symbols and your faith and ripping it off to get rich?
No, I wouldn't say it bothers me, because they're doing what they have to do.
It's a sign of the times, unfortunately, but it is...
But if it gets a kid into Satanism, hey, isn't that better for you?
It doesn't, though. No, it really doesn't.
It doesn't, because they don't
All it
have
does
a
is
clear
give them
idea.
a surface illusion, which really has nothing to do with Satanism. So it is of no value to us that these people utilize satanic imagery. If we had public record
excuse me, I
burnings...
don't understand why. Because it seems to me...
Because that isn't Satanism, what they're encouraging. Drug use, the whole heavy metal aesthetic.
What's getting them away from Christianity? Isn't that...
No, it really isn't. It really isn't, because these
and that
kids...
isn't better either.
No,
I mean,
just getting away
You're
from...
real ideological purists.
Absolutely. We're an elitist organization.
I mean, we feel that if people are happy being Christians, that they should stay that way. I'm not interested in driving people away from Christianity whatsoever.
If you want to be a Christian, you have every right to be a Christian. We don't want you to become a Satanist. We just want people who are already with us. We're not trying to convert or proselytize.
Zena, if this new satanic century truly does come into being, if your numbers increase in the Church of Satan, and as you would hope the numbers of Christians would decrease, and then suddenly you are the people of the new social order, describe to me what that social order would be like.
Well, I think it would take on its own momentum. We would have, what we would see is nature taking its course, because that's all we stand for, is to let nature dictate what our actions are, whether it's on a moment-to-moment level or a gut instinct level. And
Can
we
you be
would
more
have
specific? I mean, what about some of the laws? Would the laws of the land, as they currently are,
the
change
laws
any?
would probably become stricter, if anything.
Let's look at capital punishment, for instance. In a satanic society, a murderer wouldn't last a minute, because every individual would have the right to defend themselves then and there. Someone broke into your home.
Vigilantism? Go out and get the guy?
It's worked for thousands of years, and it should work again. If someone steals, cut their hand off, as they do in Saudi Arabia. That is a much more sane way of dealing with crime than the Christian way, which is to say, oh, you came from a bad background, and we really love you, and here, go to jail and be rehabilitated, and then we'll let you out after you've read the Bible enough. I don't have mercy for criminals. I don't have mercy for people who cause strife, and they should be summarily executed and removed from society.
In talking with the two of you,
you came from a bad background, and we really love you, and here, go to jail and be rehabilitated, and then we'll let you out after you've read the Bible enough. I don't have mercy for criminals. I don't have mercy for people who cause strife, and they should be summarily executed and removed from society.
in talking with the two of you, there's not much lightness or humor.
That's because you're talking.
This is all really
You're talking
It's all
to
very
us.
serious. There's kind of a fortress mentality about
this. If we were dragging you to be thrown to the lions, I don't think you'd see much lightness.
Look, whether you are
to the lions, Zena? Come on, now, have you been thrown to the lions?
Oh, I would say
Satanists all over the country are being.
Am I throwing you to the lions?
As much as the society that we live in now is, I'd say yes.
So what you're saying is not just necessarily me today, that you have a beleaguered stance.
See, you don't realize, from our point of view, we are under attack. We are being attacked.
Everyone should be attacking Satanists. What's
No,
wrong
I didn't
with that?
say that. I didn't say that.
But you don't see from our point of view either how we are under attack and we are retaliating. This is our philosophy.
Do you think I want to come here to explain these things to you? We're being attacked every day by the media, by religious fanatics, and by people like you, even though you claim to be rational.
And we're called upon to
We have a lot of
other
things to talk about than say why we're not this and why we're not that, but you constantly attack us and slander us. If you're going to say the Satanic Bible is responsible for murder, then you're going to have many more Satanists coming out.
I don't see that as an attack, because I think that I have the right, as a journalist, to cite quotes that I think encouraging
but we
have
the right
negative
to
behavior.
Cite the Holy Bible, and you say, well, all these things aren't Christian.
No, I say that they are philosophically inconsistent with what is taught, that they are.
Well, I seem to see this double standard.
Why is there a double standard? Why? There's Jim Jones, the Spanish Inquisition,
because
all kinds of religious and holy wars.
It's very simple. Because this book says, turn the other cheek and love your neighbor.
It says so many things.
This book says, hate your neighbor and get even with that sucker.
That book also
perform a destruction ritual on him.
That book also says that witches
That book says thou shalt not suffer a witch to live.
That was the theocratic state of Israel.
Well, it's in that book. Why didn't you take it out?
I'm not taking it out. That was a civil crime in a theocratic state.
Why are you still using
it had nothing to do with person-to-person. I'm talking person-to-person conduct here.
What about?
But people still read this.
I'm talking about the rules that govern interpersonal relationships, and those rules are love your neighbor, do unto others as you would have them to do unto you. This book says, perform a destruction ritual, and if he's annihilated as a result, rejoice.
Right, it does.
Rejoice.
What about the things in that book? In the Old Testament, it is filled with descriptions of pious, religious people sacrificing goats to Jehovah, your God, not my God, but your God. How do you explain that? Why are you still using this primitive book about goat sacrifice, the proper way to wear your hat when you're in the desert? This has nothing to do with the modern society we live in.
Civil,
ceremonial. Why are you using? Look at it as a history book.
Culture.
What does it have to do with your culture?
The new covenant that Jesus Christ established through the cross. That is the message that we now bear.
Why are you? You are of European descent, I imagine. Why do you reject the beautiful and pure tradition of pagan heritage which you have, in favor of an alien Eastern creed that came out of a desert that has nothing to do with the world you come from or live in? Why?
Well, the answer is very simple. That there is one God, and that paganism is an attempt of Satan to turn people from the true God.
What was it when your ancestors before Christ were pagans? What was it then? Were they sinners?
God always was.
And why didn't anyone hear about it?
They did hear about it. The invisible things of God are clearly seen from the creation of the world, the first chapter of Romans.
What about all your ancestors who were pagans?
Well,
are they sinners?
Some of my ancestors probably were pagans because they were a product of that culture in its declension away from the worship of the true God.
Well, you are a product of Judeo-Christian culture, which has infiltrated Western society.
I'm also as you, the product of a personal decision as to whom I would yield my life to and what value systems I would choose to live by. I made that personal decision.
And your personal decision, you will admit, is not based on rationality, but faith in a book.
No, I will not admit that. It is based upon the height of rationality of God as a demonstrably intricate, loving, personal creator and designer of this universe.
Well, whether you like it or not, in the future, people are going to look at the Bible and put it on the shelf with Mother Goose's fairy tales and all the other wonderful books that human beings have created to give them some meaning, and it will just be looked at as another book. You have your belief system. It's based on a book written 2,000 years ago. As far as I'm concerned,
in part,
it has no relevance.
And it was not written 2,000 years ago.
They've revised it. King James revised it, took out the parts he didn't like.
But there is the Old Testament that goes back with historical consistency far beyond that.
And that's the part that advocates animal sacrifice, is the Old Testament. Why didn't you throw that part out then? Why do you worship a book that advocates animal sacrifice?
As she used the word, the scapegoating was a foreshadowing of the ultimate sacrifice, as Christ, our great high priest, came to offer himself as the final sacrifice for sin.
Well, there will come a day when people will look at this tape and hear what you're saying and say these were truly the Dark Ages, when an intelligent person like Bob Larson could advocate such insane ideas.
The idea that God would love us enough to give of himself for us, I don't consider that to be insane. I think it's the most beautiful idea on the face of this planet.
So Santa Claus is a nice idea too, but I wouldn't set up a church based on it.
But what it does is that it does for me what I could not do for myself. You see, as a Satanist, you can save yourself.
It makes you feel...
As a Christian, I cannot save myself.
Well, I'm telling you, what if I told you you're free? There is no God, there's no heaven or hell. Bob, you're free to do whatever you want to do. You're a fairly rational person. I trust you. You can dismiss all this nonsense and live your life now. You wouldn't go with that. You'd rather still...
Well, I would have to make both a decision of faith as well as a decision of my intellect to determine whether or not that was truly true. You see,
have you never doubted that this book, the Bible, may not be an accurate portrayal of the universe?
And I've doubted many times the veracity of what I personally believe. And like all people, I'm on my own pilgrimage to find what has theologically been called that ultimate ground of being, that ultimate truth. But as I continue, I'm continuing a pathway paved by mercy and justice and goodness and love, not one paved by vengeance and hate and retribution, where the strong survive. Those are the two things that are antithetical.
What you're talking about, love, mercy, forgiveness, peace, that's all theoretical. Not if you're the recipient of it. Not even any Christian is practicing that at this moment. Christians are cheating on their wives. Christians are killing each other. And the Bible and your church aren't going to change anything about that. Until you look at human nature realistically, you're never going to have a sane perspective on the world.
Finally, in a nutshell, your view of Christ and your view of Satan. So there's no misunderstanding to anyone as to what you truly believe about both. I'll let you go first and Zena last. Christ and Satan.
Christ is a mythological figure, just as the Easter Bunny, Hercules, Zeus, the Tooth Fairy. And if you want to believe that Christ existed and was a historical personage, that is your right. However, I place no importance on Christ or the teachings of Christ, except that Judeo-Christianity as a whole has, in my view, been a very dangerous cult that has destroyed human potential for 2,000 years, and I oppose the idea of Christianity. I do not accept the religious validity of Christ, but I do believe it is a dangerous social system, and I am glad to see that it's finally decaying.
And Satan?
Satan, just as all the other mythological figures I named, is a figure that the human imagination has created as an archetype. If you've read Carl Jung, you know what an archetype is. An ideal. It's a type, a form, and it has no more valid existence than Christ. However, you can decide a lot about a person, whether they resonate to the archetype of the God of death, which is Christ, the God of self-sacrifice and surrender, the God of the meek and the weak, or Satan, who is traditionally the God of the strong, of the powerful, and of the leaders of the world.
Zena, Christ and the devil.
Personally, I don't even give them the time that I think the average Christian does. I don't view Christ as anything more than just what Nicholas said, an archetype. Satan, it's clearly been stated that we use it in a representative and symbolic sense of meaning the adversary, or the opposed, or the one to question. or the rebel, traditionally. And any anthropomorphic form that Satan may hold, you would be more likely to find in something that's right around us. A physical object, maybe a car. Or
no
maybe
God, no devil, just us.
It's up to you.
Mm-hmm. Just us as
that's
animals.
That's what it boils down
that's
to,
it.
yeah.
We live in a cosmos that is created by nature, comes from nature, and shall return to nature. There's no judge above us or below us.